there's a safety net, something for people to fall into, as opposed to collapse, chaos, authoritarianism, and all the bad things that flow when people just don't know what to do. I wonder if you could talk to us about this dual power and how we can spread this knowledge.
So Sharon, I love the question and what is embedded within the question, right? Because it is dual power, right? Like it's not either or, it's both and. Like as you and Dick said at the very beginning in the introduction, I'm a Green Party member. I ran for president. I managed the Stein Baraka campaign for president, uh, and I engage in electoral politics, but I'm not an electoral fetishist, right? Like I know that every movement that has been successful for not just like trying to elect good people, but to be transformational, you need a movements that are broad and deep, that are politically educated and meeting people's needs, and you need an electoral arm of it. And that's the dual power that we think about. We have a current system, right? But how do we create power within this system? In other words, instead of going head on frontal attack, we starve the beast, right? Like we withdraw out of the capitalist system as much as we can. We withdraw away from the white supremacist, heteropatriarchal systems, treat ourselves differently, right? I'm not saying that we don't engage in class struggle, but there's a difference in like, so it's not either or, right? It's both and. Resist the harm build the new, right? So I absolutely believe that we have to resist the exploitation, the oppression to ourselves and others, right? But dual power understands that we can also create system. We don't have to stay dependent on the corporate capitalist system. And Sharon, I'm grateful that you named this is not just late stage capitalism. It's literally end stage capitalism. And there's nothing to celebrate there, because if we don't actually create something new, fascism, explicit fascism, is the next stage, right? And we see it developing. So what we're saying is there is an ecological collapse. It's not coming.
Can you just hold on just one moment? For some reason, Dick touched something and it made Gregory Porter begin to sing, one of our favorite artists. But go ahead.
You'll edit that out.
Well timed, nonetheless. But Sharon, the point is, it's not either or, it's both and. So we can build dual power by meeting people's needs, and we can also engage in electoral politics. And one of the things I'm excited about locally is we've created something called the North Coast People's Alliance, where registered Greens and progressive Democrats and peace and freedom socialists and declined estates work together in local elections. There's a rich history in this country called the Nonpartisan League, where people were like, I don't know about y'all, but I grow weary of the constant battle between party affiliation. I don't think it's helpful. What I'll say is this. I spend most of my time now building alternatives and working with people that agree with me. And I don't even talk about electoral politics except during elections. But when I do talk about elections or when I do talk about electoral politics during elections, I ask people who are seeking my vote, what is your plan to address the fundamental racial injustice and inequities that exist in our community? What's your plan? What is your plan to welcome immigrants and to ensure that we are living up to the principles and values that we say this country is about? What is your plan to help bring public banking and participatory budgeting and nurturing worker-owned cooperatives? What is your plan for universal basic income? Simple, right? And you just say, before I cast my vote, I'm not going to waste my vote on somebody who does not have a plan to get to the world I want to live in. I want to invest my vote in a future. So most of the time is spent over in this circle building alternatives and fighting against the racist, sexist, class oppressive system. During elections, I spend my time saying, what is your plan to get to a world that we say we're about? And, when I take that approach, I find that I can build a lot of solidarity with other ordinary people. And it also, frankly, puts elected officials to the test, right? Like, what is your plan? And you know what? Most of them don't have one.
No.
Most of them are all actually, like, the Republicans are just flat out neo-fascists. And most of the Democrats, at least at the leadership level, are just neoliberals who are doubling down on neoliberalism. And again, at the local level, we've got a lot more power to be able to work together on that dual power model.
So, Dick, do you want to ask a question, or can I?
No, go ahead.
Can I go to my second part of my question?
Yeah.
So, I had a second question, and you touched on it. I'm very interested, David. I'm always very interested in white men who seem to have racial consciousness, racial awareness, for lack of a better term, who seem to have been awakened. And I want to know, what was your experience? How did that happen to you? Well,
thank you for the question. Thank you for the compliment. And also thank you for the question, because so the answer is Serena. And the context is, first of all, my hatred of capitalism and economic injustice is not merely intellectual, it's lived experience. I grew up in poverty. I know what it's like as an 8-year-old boy carrying a 5-gallon bucket of my family's excrement to the end of and dumping it into a hole, right? And again, like urban poverty is different and worse than rural poverty, but all poverty sucks, right? But my hatred of the economic injustice and system and the shame that I had around it, I learned that it wasn't my parents' fault, that they weren't bad people, that the system was the problem, right? And again, I learned that through lived experience. But because I'm a cisgendered white male in this body growing up, I bought the rest of the creation myth, right? Of the United States as the land of liberty, justice, and equality, and that we were the great shining light on the hill, and we were going to bring liberty, justice, and equality to the entire world. And honestly, it wasn't until I got into college that began to get challenged for me. And look, partly it happened through my work in the anti-apartheid movement, because I was like, apartheid sucks. This is unfair. Like at a core being like, I'm old enough and y'all are old enough to remember, the anti-apartheid movement. Well, I was a student activist there, right? And I also want to be really honest and like vulnerable and transparent to answer your question, Sharon, because at the time I had in my head, like, look, I know racial injustice is unfair. In fact, I'm working on the anti-apartheid movement, but I wish that women and people of color would just kind of get over it so we could work on class, because that's what would unite us all, right? But I was too smart to say it out loud. But Serena was a Black woman who I was very close to, and we were intimate, like we were like, so we were incredibly close, right? And because I knew her and trusted her, I could articulate that. And I did. And I'm getting emotional because I still remember like the look on her face, right? It was a combination of sadness and anger and disappointment, like so many things, right? When I said what I just said, I mean, like if we could just get over it, and then we could build a movement for justice. And she said, David, I know you. You're a good person. I know the words that you think are coming out of your mouth, but I only wish you could hear the words that are coming into my ears as a Black woman. Because when you say like, class is the only thing that matters, like, has it ever occurred, and identity politics, has it ever occurred to you that that's because that's your identity? And maybe, you bastard, that my lived experience as a Black woman actually has influenced who I am. And maybe, just maybe, you're missing something. And I'm getting emotional, Sharon, because I can still remember then. You ever heard the phrase paradigm shift?
Yes.
That was the moment like it all started to turn, right? And I, in my body, in my mind, in my heart, I was flooded with shame and embarrassment, but also anger at a system, because I am a good person, Sharon. Like, and that moment was when it hit me like, oh, oppression really is intersectional, right? Like if anything is a power over and dominator, I have to be against that, right? And just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that's the thing, like positionality matters, Sharon. It's like, so thank you again for the compliment. But what I know is this, I'll never be able to see things that you as a Black woman can see. Right. So if I'm going to really be part of a movement to win, I need you so that you can see things and point things out to me. And honestly, you need me so that as a white man who came up in poverty, I can see things maybe that you can't see. Right. And we need transgendered people, and we need immigrant people. Like, we need all of us if we're going to dismantle this system. So for me, it was a very personalized experience of somebody who loved me enough to tell me the truth, and also to do it in a way that inspired me to be better. She didn't try to shame me. She didn't denigrate me. She genuinely felt sorry for me and helped me to achieve that kind of consciousness.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so you absolutely exude enthusiasm, confidence, optimism. And I listened to your questions for the candidates, There's no candidate here in Los Angeles that could answer 2 or 3 of them that I know of the major party. Nobody that's going to win an election. And even though in January we had this wonderful event where you and colleagues spoke, it was dynamic and people really, really did enjoy it. Maybe 100 people there, I don't know, 150. But what we find in those kind of events, it's usually just the choir there. We were the choir representing all kinds of groups, and that message, your message, as dramatic as it is, it doesn't reach a lot of people. So I'm wondering. So really, I wanted to drill down. So what nuts and bolts thing are you doing with like with the solidarity economy ecosystem and the dual power? I mean, what practical things are you putting in place?
Oh, well, thank you for that. So first of all, thank you for the compliment. I also want to say this, Dick, like people sometimes say that we're just preaching to the choir, but I grew up in the Baptist church. And one thing I know is when the choir comes together, the choir wants to sing. So part of what we ought to be, and let's be clear, the progressive choir is out of tune. Like part of what we need to do is get together and have a little choir practice. So that's number one. Number two, maybe somebody like, I don't know, Sharon Kyle ought to run for office in Los Angeles in order to have a plan to actually, or people like Sharon ought to run for office. But then the third thing, to answer your question directly, not to put you on the spot, Sharon, but like just saying, but Kyle or Dick, what we're doing is we're building and facilitating land back processes. Do you know that we in Eureka, Jared Gigi in Solatluk, the city returned 800 acres of sacred island, the birthplace of the cosmology for the Wiyot people that had also been the site of a horrific massacre. Mm-hmm. So that was decades of work with the Wiyot tribe and Eurekans working together. And it started by literally just witnessing on the day that there was supposed to be the ceremony, the World Renewal Ceremony. Cheryl Seidner, former tribal administrator and spiritual leader of the Wiyot tribe, went to a candlelight vigil and looked at the island. And other, mostly women, started it. But then other people started to show up, and not just indigenous people, but white people began to just show up because we heard about this vigil. And so just the power of coming and bearing witness began a narrative, right? And then when the tribe got access to the land, it wasn't a Superfund site, but it was a hazardous waste site by the EPA. And under Wiyot leadership, over 80 tons of metal and garbage and scrap and toxic waste were taken off, including non-Wiyot people under their leadership. So this is an example, again, of a public land back. It was the first time in the history of this country that a municipal government voluntarily returned land, not as a result of a lawsuit or litigation or a court order, right? So the point is, Dick, it happened because we were collaborating. Again, we have to confront our history, but it doesn't have to be our future, right? This is the thing, like, because there's a shameful history of white supremacy and enslavement of Africans and an attempted genocide of the indigenous. We have to confront that, but we can't stay wallowing in it. Our future can be different. So land back, both public but also private. Not one, not two, but 3 different private lands I have helped to facilitate people returning them to the Wiyot tribe. And we're literally in the process now of building out affordable housing. In fact, we just got covered by Next City. I don't know if you're aware of that publication, but our community land trust is being lifted up. We're going to be building 39 units of housing for currently houseless youth. And again, with preference to indigenous people, but not exclusively for Wiyot people. but we're also wrapping services around the youth in an indigenous worldview that says housing first, but not exclusively, because we need all, like, we need to bring our full selves. So Dick, when I say affordable housing, we're decommodifying land for the least vulnerable amongst us. And we're incubating worker-owned cooperatives. And we're engaging in assisting people to think through co-ops, but not just for the sake of co-ops. Co-ops for commerce, yes, but co-ops also to teach ourselves how to make and implement decisions.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I believe in, and you can touch on this, is the whole concept of worker-owned and operated cooperatives could change the culture. I believe that we don't know how to live in a democracy. We're so accustomed to tops down, hierarchical, where people, you know, from K to 12, well, first when you're born, you got your parents, then K to 12, you got your teacher telling you what to do. And then once you get into the working world, you've got your boss telling you what to do. And I think that that's a major contributing factor for why so few people are engaged in their civic responsibilities, including, you know, writing to the editor, and not just voting, but more than that, we have responsibilities taking the reins of our society, and we don't, because we're accustomed to somebody telling us what to do.
Or yeah, so true, Sharon, because and what if they're not telling you what to do, then you tell them what to do, right? Like it's never a collective process of making and implementing decisions together, right? Like either you're the boss and you tell other people what to do, or the boss tells you what to do, right? Like I like to say that, you know, the most important thing that human children anywhere learn is how to walk and how to talk. And in this current corporatized education system, the first thing we teach them, sit down and shut up, right? Like, we're not nurturing children to have, like, one of the reasons that I am so happy and optimistic, one of them is a happy coincidence of biochemistry. I think I'm just blessed. I don't suffer from the neurodivergence that some people do. And that's a gift. It's a blessing from the goddess. I didn't do anything for it. The other thing I didn't do anything for either. And that was, even though I was reared in poverty, my mama, and my papa, that's Southern for grandparents, who helped to raise me, y'all, they bathed me in love. Like I like my earliest memories, I know that I was cherished, I was cared for, and they taught me I have something valuable to contribute, that I had gifts, and they taught me how to offer my gifts properly, right? They taught me to care about other people. They enculturated into me that love and compassion were virtues, and it was the right way to be. And then they modeled it and made me feel loved, right? So I was just super lucky that way, right? What I'm getting at is that nurturing was not, we're going to tell you what to do. It was, we want you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. So they literally taught me and modeled for me, oh, here is how you share. Like, you know, here is how, like, and I'll tell you, Sharon, one of the earliest memories that I have as a little boy, I'm probably 5, 6 years old. I'm fighting with my brother and my cousin Joe Michael, because I'm from the South, so you know half the boys have double names, right? But we're fighting over a little toy. It was one of those little Matchbox toys, I think. One thing I know for a fact, my mama comes into the room and she's towering over us, and we're crying and yelling and fussing. And I remember the first thing is she crouches down and gets down to our level. And she puts her hands on us and literally just soothingly says, shh, hey, what's going on? And she whispered, what's going on? What's going on? So we had to, in order to be heard, and, hey, just breathe. What's going on? Oh, here's the problem. There's only one of these, but there's 3 of you. Look, one, everybody count. And she 1, 2, she got us collectively counting together. And then she said, so that's the problem. But, oh, look, I've seen you play with this. I've seen you play with this. And she literally just starts to bring it toys from around in the circle and says, look, there's enough. And if you really all need to play with just this one right now, well, you just have to share. because there's enough to go around as long as you share. And Sharon, it made sense to me as a 5-year-old boy. It makes sense to me as a 60-year-old man. There's enough to go around as long as we share.
Thank you for sticking
Like, it
around.
ain't
If you
rocket
like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.